She said it while rinsing a wine glass. Not during a fight. Not after a confession. Just mid-rinse. Like she was commenting on the weather. Every time I touch you, I feel nothing. No emphasis. No drama. Just the casual declaration of a dead nerve. I stood there in the hallway holding a bag of frozen peas, trying to remember why I went to the kitchen in the first place. That sentence didn't feel like a bullet. Bullets are loud. This was quiet. Heavy but soft. Like an anchor wrapped in velvet. She didn't even glance at me after saying it. Just set the glass upside down on the rack and started humming some song I didn't recognize. Probably something she heard in his car. I said the only thing that made sense to say. That makes two of us. She paused then, just for a second, like maybe she hadn't expected a comeback. But she didn't argue, didn't cry, didn't even ask what I meant. She smiled, and I swear to God, that smirk haunts me more than anything else that followed. It wasn't until later that night, after she fell asleep beside me like nothing had happened, that I pulled up the security app on my phone. I had installed a discreet indoor cam months ago. Not for her. For me. I kept forgetting if I turned off the stove. I didn't expect to find her on the couch last Tuesday, in a tank top I didn't recognize, whispering into someone's chest while her legs draped across his lap. I watched her laugh like she used to laugh with me. I didn't watch it twice. Instead, I opened my contacts, scrolled down to a name I'd never had the courage to press before, and sent a message. Still in town? The reply came back faster than it should have. Dinner tomorrow? It wasn't a plan. It was a signal flare. A quiet scream into the void, hoping someone, anyone, would hear it and remind me I still existed. The next evening, I ironed a shirt that hadn't been worn in 3 years. I even used cologne, the one she hated. The one she used to say made me smell like a lawyer who couldn't win a case. I wore it anyway. And as I sat across from her the next night, no, not her, the other one, the one who remembered how to ask real questions, I saw the restaurant door open. Lorna walked in. Her mouth actually opened when she saw who I was with. Not from jealousy, not rage. It was the first time in years I'd seen her genuinely afraid. And that was just the appetizer. I didn't move when she spotted us. I didn't wave, didn't smirk, didn't offer that polite, awkward nod you give someone when the past collides with the present in public. I just held my fork midair, paused between bites of roasted salmon and roasted illusions, and watched her freeze like a glitch in the middle of a well-rehearsed lie. Her coworker stood behind her, tall, tan, too confident. He looked around the restaurant like he was sizing it up for resale. Probably the kind of guy who uses cologne as personality. I didn't care, but I watched her closely. Not because I was jealous. I wasn't. That had already died. I just wanted to see what her face would do. And it did something. Something strange. First, confusion. That was expected. Then a flicker of recognition, not just of the woman sitting across from me, but of the threat she posed. Then came the fear. Not movie-style, open-mouthed terror. No, it was more subtle than that. The kind of fear that tenses the corners of your mouth, flattens your nostrils, and makes your pupils shrink. She didn't expect her. I didn't even expect her. The woman across from me, her name's Delaware. Not short for anything. Just Delaware. I met her a decade ago at a work seminar I didn't want to attend. She'd been the only one in the room not pretending to be impressed by the speaker. She leaned over during the first 10 minutes and whispered, "If he says paradigm shift one more time, I'm going to fake a seizure." I'd laughed so hard I got dirty looks. We never really stayed in touch, just the occasional like on each other's posts, until the message I sent the night my wife dissolved the last sliver of our marriage with one cruel sentence. Del wasn't a rebound. She wasn't a revenge date. She was real. And I hadn't felt real in years. Lorna made her way to a table on the other side of the room. She didn't look back at us, but I knew she felt it. The weight of what I didn't say. I let her sit in the tension. Let her pretend to laugh at something her guy said. Let her taste the meal through the bitter flavor of control slipping away. Del noticed, of course. "Was that her?" she asked casually, sipping her wine. "Yeah." Del raised a brow. "And she said she doesn't feel anything when she touches me." Del's fork stopped mid-motion. "Wow." I told her that makes two of us. Del whistled under her breath. "And now she gets to see who does." We both laughed, but mine cracked on the way out. Because somewhere deep in the pit of me, I wasn't ready. I wasn't healed. I wasn't proud. I was wrecked. But I was too tired to admit it. After dinner, we stepped outside. Cool air. Soft streetlight. The kind of evening that begs for a fresh start. I didn't kiss Delaware. She didn't lean in. It wasn't like that. But she touched my shoulder before walking away and said, "If you ever want to be seen again, you know how to find me." That night, I walked into the house and found Lorna standing in the living room. She had wine in one hand, her phone in the other. Her eyes didn't match her tone. Who was she? I took off my coat, hung it slowly. Let the silence stretch like old chewing gum. Does it matter? She set the wine down too hard. Red droplets landed on the white rug she insisted on buying last fall. "Are you trying to hurt me?" And there it was. The audacity. The gall. The unbelievable irony of a woman who had brought another man into my home while I was out buying her almond milk, asking me if I was trying to hurt her. I stepped closer. "No, Lorna. I'm trying to remember what it feels like not to be invisible." She didn't answer. Just stood there, probably rehearsing excuses in her mind, building the scaffolding of a new lie she hadn't decided whether to use yet. And then she laughed. That's when I realized something terrifying. She still thought she had the upper hand, but she had no idea what I'd found in her closet 3 nights ago. And that secret? It would blow everything wide open. It wasn't a metaphor. I'm not speaking symbolically. I mean a literal closet. Ours in the hallway. The one that never quite shut all the way unless you leaned into it and held the knob just right. The one she claimed was just full of old coats and wrapping paper. The one I hadn't opened in at least 2 years. It was 3 nights before the dinner with Dell when I went looking for batteries. Not the kind in the kitchen drawer, the AS we never seemed to have. So I started opening doors. When I pulled the closet open, it didn't creak or resist. It just gave in, like it had been waiting. At first, it looked normal. A few scarves, a box of tangled Christmas lights. Then I noticed the bag. Black leather. Not hers. She hated leather. Said it smelled like death. But this one sat neatly in the corner, zipped shut with too much care. I hesitated. That kind of hesitation you only get when you already know you're going to regret what you find, but something inside you is done with not knowing. I opened it. Inside were receipts. Dozens of them. Hotel rooms. Wine bars. A massage parlor with the word escape in the name. But it wasn't just the receipts. It was who signed them. Sometimes initials. Sometimes just a smiley face. One had a note. For L and a same room next week. And another, folded and smudged, read simply, "You're still better than he deserves." I remember kneeling there for a long time. My knees started to ache, but I couldn't get up. Not because I was shocked. I wasn't. Not really. I was fascinated. Fascinated by how easy it had been for her to weave an entire second life without ever actually hiding it. She didn't have to. I was too passive, too trusting, too tired. She knew I wouldn't dig. When I finally stood up, I didn't say anything to her. Didn't throw the bag in her face. Didn't scream. I made dinner like always. She came home late again, muttered some excuse about traffic. I nodded. I watched her chew. I watched her swallow. I watched her lie. And I planned. So that's what I meant when I stood there in the living room and told her she had no idea what I found in the closet. Her face twitched then. Not much, but enough. Enough to know she remembered what she left there. Enough to know she knew what was coming. "You went through my things?" she asked. Her voice had that tone, mock offense. Like I had crossed some sacred line she'd drawn with chalk in the middle of a battlefield. "Just one thing," I said. "The bag." Silence. Not even the fridge hummed. "You don't understand what you saw," she said finally, like she was reading from a poorly written script. "No," I replied. "But I understand what I felt when I saw it." "And what was that?" she snapped. "Clarity." She didn't like that. She took a step toward me, then stopped. Her wine glass was still on the table. She looked at it like it might offer her a better answer than I had. "You have no right to dig through my stuff like that." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Lorna, you were in hotel rooms signing receipts like you were autographing betrayal. That's not fair. Neither was me believing you every time you said you loved me." Her lips curled into something cruel then. "Maybe if you were a man someone could feel something for, I wouldn't have had to find it somewhere else." That moment. That one. That was the final nail. Not the receipts. Not the lies. Not the coworker. But those words. I nodded. Calm. Flat. "Thanks for the confirmation." And I walked past her, into the hallway, opened my phone, and pressed send on a message I'd drafted 2 nights ago, but hadn't dared to deliver until now. It went to our shared friend, Petra, the one Lorna still thought she could manipulate, the one who knew about the bag. The one who promised, "If you ever need the truth on record, I've got it." What she sent back was a video. And in it, Lorna wasn't just kissing someone. She was begging. Begging for a life without me. She had no idea what I was about to do with that footage. But trust me, the next night would change everything. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken. I wasn't. That had happened long before I opened the closet, before I saw the receipts, before she said she felt nothing. The heartbreak had passed quietly months ago, maybe even years. No, what kept me awake now wasn't grief. It was precision. The video Petra sent was short. A minute, maybe. Grainy phone footage from some dimly lit patio with string lights overhead. Lorna was leaning against a man, not the one from the restaurant, and whispering something into his neck. He laughed and said, "You're really doing this?" And her voice, slightly slurred from wine but terrifyingly clear, replied, "He'll never know. And if he finds out, who cares? I've got leverage." She said leverage like she was a character in a soap opera. And maybe that's how she viewed life now. Drama, power, stakes, victims and villains. But the truth was, I wasn't playing anymore. I was just watching. I watched it a dozen times. Not because I needed proof, but because I wanted to study her. Her face, her posture, her ease. She had looked me in the eye 2 days after this was filmed and asked me if I could pick up more almond milk on the way home. She still had laundry in the dryer. Still signed holiday cards with me. Still laid in bed next to me like she wasn't already somewhere else entirely. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't confront. I wouldn't demand explanations. Instead, I invited her somewhere public. That's where she'd feel it most. "Dinner tomorrow?" I asked casually over breakfast. She raised an eyebrow, like I'd asked her to go skydiving. "Dinner? Yeah. Figured we could try that new wine bar you mentioned. I made a reservation." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." I could already see the wheels turning behind her eyes. Who told him about the wine bar? Why now? What does he know? Perfect. The next evening, I wore the same shirt I had on the first time we'd met. Loose-fitting, soft blue, slightly faded. She used to say I looked unassumingly trustworthy in it. She wore a black dress I hadn't seen in years. The one she used to say made her feel like she was in control of the room. We arrived at the wine bar just before 7. Dim lighting, soft music, open layout. I'd chosen the table carefully, near the center, not by the wall. No escape routes. She smiled politely at the waiter. Ordered Pinot Noir. I asked for water. I watched her posture, the way she kept checking the room. I didn't say much. Just smiled. Let her stew in the silence. "I have to ask," she finally said after the bread arrived. "Why dinner? After the way things have been." I leaned back, ran my finger along the edge of the napkin. "I wanted to celebrate something," I said. She tilted her head. "Celebrate what?" "You." That threw her off. "Me?" I nodded. "You've worked so hard the last few years. Balancing your job, your friends, your side projects. You've really made it all look seamless." She squinted at me, sensing the hook, but not the line. "Emery, what's going on?" I pulled out my phone, slid it across the table. "Press play." She stared at the screen. Blinked. Then did exactly what I hoped she'd do. Tried to laugh it off. "Seriously? You're going through old gossip again. Is that what that is?" "Gossip? Where did you even get this?" I didn't answer. She paused the video halfway through. Her hand was shaking. "You're humiliating me." "No," I said quietly. "You did that yourself. I'm just giving you the dignity of an audience." She glanced around. People were looking now. Not everyone, but enough. A couple at the next table was pretending not to listen. The server stiffened nearby, unsure whether to approach. "Why here?" she hissed. "Because everyone here is exactly the type of person you perform for. You wanted eyes, Lorna. Now you have them." She pushed back from the table. "You've gone off the rails." "No," I said calmly. "I've finally arrived." She stood, furious, but there was nowhere to storm off to that wouldn't look like surrender. So she sat again, lowered her voice, switched tactics. "We can talk about this at home. Privately. I'm done talking. What do you want from me?" I leaned forward, met her eyes. "I want you to remember this moment. Burn it into your memory. Because this is the last time you'll ever have power over me." She blinked fast. Her lip quivered. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I took my phone, stood, left cash on the table, and walked out without saying another word. When I got home, her closet was open. The black bag was gone. But it didn't matter anymore. Because the next day, someone else knocked on my door with an envelope full of truths Lorna had no idea were about to surface. And trust me, she should have left well enough alone. The knock wasn't loud, but it was deliberate. Not the kind of knock you ignore. Not the kind that says, neighbor needs sugar, or package got misdelivered. It was the kind of knock that announces someone knows something and wants to be let in before they say it out loud. I hesitated at the door. It was Sunday morning. No cars on the street except my own. The wind was still. The sky hung low and gray, as if the whole world had decided to stay quiet just long enough for this one moment to happen. He was in a gray jacket, well-worn boots, and carried himself like he'd seen enough to know exactly how this would go. I didn't recognize him, but when he said my name, I didn't ask how he knew it. His voice wasn't aggressive, just solid. "You're Emery, right?" I nodded. "I think you need to see something," he said, pulling a thick white envelope from inside his coat. He didn't wait for an invite, just held it out, like a baton in a race I didn't remember starting. "What is this?" I asked. "Something your wife didn't want you to have." At first, I thought it was more affair evidence. Maybe photos, messages, something from one of her many flings trying to hurt her back. But the return address on the envelope stopped me. A law firm. One I'd seen on TV ads. Personal injury, whistleblower claims, corporate fraud cases. I opened it slowly, right there on the porch, with the man watching. The first page wasn't a letter. It was a contract. Highlighted in yellow was Lorna's name and signature. Beneath it, a non-disclosure agreement. Dated nearly 9 months ago. I flipped through the rest. A complaint filed against her employer, documentation of internal investigations, and finally, a payout. 6 figures. That was the moment the pieces started clicking into place. The secret spa trips. The bonus money she said came from freelance consulting. The sudden luxury handbags she swore were on sale. The black bag in the closet. It wasn't just receipts for affair motels. It had been hiding something much worse. Lorna had been involved in a corporate fraud scandal. And she hadn't just kept it secret, she'd leveraged it. The man in the gray jacket finally spoke again. She claimed she had leverage over the regional manager. Got him to keep her name out of the settlement press release. But someone inside thought the truth mattered more. "Why bring this to me?" I asked, still flipping through the documents like they might combust if I read them too fast. "Because your name came up. On a financial transfer." I looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" "She wired money to an account in your name. But it wasn't your account." A cold spike pierced through me. "You think she forged my identity?" He didn't nod. He didn't have to. The silence did it for him. I stepped back inside and let the door close slowly behind me. The man didn't follow. He just tipped his head and walked away. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the papers until my coffee went cold. I wasn't even sure what emotion to feel first. Rage? Betrayal? Disbelief? The woman I married hadn't just cheated. She hadn't just lied. She'd used me legally, financially. She'd made me an invisible co-conspirator in a crime I hadn't even known existed. And suddenly, everything came rushing back. All the time she'd insisted I sign things without reading them. Just the car insurance, she'd said. Just a joint banking thing. And I'd signed. Like a fool. Like a husband who still believed trust was a two-way street. I needed confirmation. I called Petra. When she picked up, I didn't even say hello. "Did you know about the money?" There was a long pause on the other end. Not all of it. I knew there was something fishy about her work situation, but I didn't think it involved you. She wired money using my name. Forged my ID. "Oh my God." "Petra," I said, my voice flat. "I'm going to the bank. And then I'm going to a lawyer." "What are you going to do?" I looked over at the documents again. One line stood out in bold. "Any breach of this agreement may result in civil liability and reputational damage." I'm going to make sure Lorna knows what real leverage feels like. But what I didn't know yet, what none of us did, was that Lorna wasn't done. In fact, she was planning something. Something reckless. And the next time I saw her face, it wasn't in our house. It was in a police station. Because Lorna had just accused me of stealing the settlement money. And this time, she brought proof. 3 days later, I was sitting in a sterile room with a window that didn't look outside. One of those awful interview rooms with 4 gray walls and a water-stained ceiling tile, the kind that makes even innocent people sweat. The detective's tone wasn't aggressive. It was careful, surgical, like he'd done this dance 1,000 times and knew how to make you misstep without ever raising his voice. Your wife claims you accessed funds from an account under her name, that you withdrew over $30,000 in a single month without her consent. I didn't blink. She forged my signature. I didn't even know about the account until 3 days ago. The detective tilted his head like a curious bird. You're listed as a secondary holder on the wire transfer documents. Documents she created. He tapped his pen slowly on the folder. Do you have proof of that? I slid Petra's envelope across the table like a poker player revealing a royal flush. Start with page 12. He read. Slowly. Then again. The mood shifted. Not instantly, but enough that the tension in my chest began to crack like melting ice. When he finally looked up, it was with a different kind of intensity, one less interested in me and more in what I was about to help them uncover. This, if true, changes everything. It is true, I said, standing. And I'm done letting her write the story while I'm stuck living in it. They released me after 3 hours, but I wasn't relieved. I wasn't free yet. Not by a long shot. Because Lorna wasn't just panicking, she was escalating. Throwing grenades in every direction, hoping one would stick. And the next one? She lobbed it straight into my workplace. That Monday, my manager, Miriam, a woman who barely tolerated awkward silences and hated drama more than taxes, called me into her office. She looked pale, the way someone does when they're about to deliver news they didn't ask to be a part of. Emery, we received an anonymous email this morning, she began. It included your name, your employment contract, and allegations of financial misconduct. I stared at her. Come again. She turned her screen so I could see. There it was, my name in the subject line, an attachment with my digital signature, and a wall of text that would have made a stranger think I was laundering money through company resources. It was fake, of course, but the effort? Meticulous. And I knew immediately who had sent it. Lorna. She was trying to burn the whole thing down. And me with it. Miriam studied my face. You need to tell me, should I be worried about you staying here? No, I said calmly. But I'd be worried if I were you. She blinked. Excuse me. I reached into my bag and pulled out a USB drive. Here's a copy of the original financial investigation your firm probably missed. And a list of every transaction under Lorna's forged alias, including the date she used my credentials to sign that contract. I kept records. I've already spoken to the police. You're not in trouble, but if she manages to rope your company into this, you will be. Miriam didn't say a word. She plugged in the drive, opened the files, and started scrolling. It only took 5 minutes before she looked up. All business now. You're taking paid leave. Effective immediately. Voluntary. No. Mandatory. I stood slowly. You believe me? I believe she's not the smartest criminal I've dealt with. And I believe you've just started fighting back. The next 2 days were quiet. Too quiet. No calls from Lorna. No texts. Nothing from her lawyer. Just silence. I used the time to dig. Petra helped me. They'll help me, too. Turns out she knew a guy who specialized in financial forensics. A guy who could trace a forged identity back to the device that created it. He worked fast. Efficient. He sent me a spreadsheet of IP addresses and device IDs linked to every suspicious transaction. And one stood out, a laptop that was still registered under our joint Amazon account. Lorna's. She had used my old computer to forge the wire transfers. The one I left behind when I moved into the guest room. The one I thought was wiped clean. Turns out she'd kept it, set it up in her new office, and used it without even changing the login. So now I had evidence. Digital footprints. Timestamps. Confirmation. I called the detective back. He didn't answer. 30 minutes later, I got a call from Petra. You need to get down to the station, she said, her voice shaking. Now? Why? She's there. I grabbed my keys. What happened? She didn't come in to confess, Emery. She came in with a lawyer and a file that says you threatened her, that you've been stalking her, that you're emotionally unstable. I laughed, but it wasn't funny. She's trying to frame me. She's not trying, Petra said softly. She is. I hung up. I didn't even finish lacing my boots before I was in the car. The truth was boiling now, close to the surface. But before it could erupt, before I could drop everything I had in front of the people who needed to see it most, I had to do one last thing. Something no one would expect. Because if Lorna wanted to play dirty, I'd show her what it felt like when a man who's been quiet too long finally opens his mouth. Not to beg, not to defend, but to expose. I didn't go straight to the police station. I know, probably not what you expected after that call. But I'd been reacting to Lorna's game too long, showing up every time she pulled a lever, responding like a marionette to her carefully timed chaos. Not this time. Instead, I drove to the one place I knew would crack her public illusion faster than any courtroom could. Her mother's house. It wasn't a spontaneous decision. I've been keeping tabs ever since I found out about the money, the real money. The hush settlement, the NDAs, the secret transfers. What Lorna didn't realize was that the digital footprints she left behind weren't just on emails and financial records. They were also in her family's group chats, her shared Google Calendar, and yes, her own mother's phone, which Petra had helped me mirror last week using a backup login Lorna never deleted from our home computer. When I pulled up to the White Ranch-style home, her mother, Valerie, was already out front watering her roses. She was the kind of woman who judged people based on handshake firmness and whether or not you wore proper slacks to church. We'd never been close, but I'd always played nice. Always tried. This time, I didn't. "I need to speak with you," I said without preamble, stepping out of the car with a folder in my hand. Not a manila one. Not legal. This one was bright red. Loud. Symbolic. She looked me over warily. "Now's not a good time." "Now is exactly the right time," I said, walking right past her toward the porch. She didn't stop me. Inside, I laid the folder on her dining table and opened it. One by one, I placed the documents down, printed screenshots of transactions, excerpts of the settlement agreement, side-by-side comparisons of forged and authentic signatures. Even a photo of the wire transfer interface Lorna used while logged into my identity. Then I dropped the USB on top. "Everything you need to know is right here," I said, locking eyes with her. "Everything your daughter's been doing behind closed doors. And now, what she's trying to pin on me." Valerie didn't speak. Her eyes skimmed the pages, but her hands trembled slightly. "She came into the station today to accuse me of emotional abuse. Said I'm unstable. A threat. She has a lawyer. A case. All fabricated. But the truth." I tapped the folder. "The truth is heavier. And it always sinks." She sat down slowly, one hand gripping the edge of the table. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, voice softer than I expected. "Because you have a choice," I said. "You can keep believing whatever she spins and act shocked when this explodes in court, or you can stop pretending you didn't notice this side of her years ago." Valerie didn't deny it. And that silence? That was everything I needed. She reached for the USB. "Can I show this to someone?" "You can show it to everyone," I said, already heading for the door. By the time I got to the station, the temperature had changed. The receptionist recognized me instantly and didn't ask questions, just pointed toward the side conference room like she already knew who I was here for. Inside, Petra sat with two detectives and a woman in a blazer who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Across the table, Lorna. Cold. Poised. Calculated. She barely glanced at me as I entered, which told me everything I needed to know. They'd prepped her. She thought she had the upper hand. "Mr. Redding," one of the detectives said. "We were just reviewing Ms. Redding's formal complaint. She claims you." I raised my hand, calm but firm. "I'm going to stop you right there, because what I have will reframe this entire conversation." I placed my laptop on the table, plugged in the same USB I'd just given to Valerie, and opened a folder titled Chronology of Lies. They watched in silence as I navigated from document to document. Forged forms. Altered metadata. IP log files. Financial reports with timestamps. Messages from Petra confirming dates and conversations. And finally, video clips, blurred faces, but voices unmistakable. Lorna whispering to an unknown man, "If I push him hard enough, he'll break. And then I can file. I'll say he snapped. It'll be easy." The room changed. Even her lawyer shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Lorna's expression didn't collapse immediately, it unraveled, second by second, like a thread being pulled from a garment until all that remained was something see-through and pathetic. The lead detective cleared his throat. "Ms. Redding, do you have any response to these materials?" Lorna's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Her lawyer leaned in and whispered something. Lorna stiffened, looked at me, and for the first time in months, I saw something real behind her eyes. Not guilt, not sorrow, panic. I stood, closed the laptop, and turned to the room. "Let me be clear. I don't want revenge. I want resolution. But if this goes to trial, I will not be quiet. I will not be gentle. I will not protect someone who tried to dismantle my life for sport." Petra stood behind me, arms folded. The detective nodded. "We'll need to process everything. But I think we have what we need for now." I didn't look back at Lorna as I left. I didn't need to. She had built her entire world on the assumption I'd stay passive, quiet, forgettable. But I was none of those things anymore. 2 weeks later, I stood on a hill just outside town, watching the sun melt into the horizon like something finally deciding to rest. The sky was lavender, streaked with gold, and for the first time in what felt like years, my chest wasn't tight. There was no weight, no suspicion, no carefully rehearsed replies or fake smiles. Just stillness. Just me. Lorna's world had unraveled faster than even I expected. Once the police finished reviewing the documents, the official tone shifted overnight. Her lawyer dropped her within 48 hours of the full evidence being reviewed. Petra told me Lorna tried spinning it like she'd been manipulated by outside forces, but the records were clear. Her digital trail was a roadmap to her own downfall. The charges against me were dropped formally, with a written apology from the department, one I didn't ask for but kept anyway. A reminder. Her employer reopened the settlement. Turns out, she'd hidden key details in the original complaint. That meant she violated her NDA, which meant they took the money back, and then some. I don't know where she is now. Last I heard, she moved in with a distant cousin out of state. Her mother, surprisingly, cut contact. Said, I raised a daughter, not a saboteur. Funny how people change their tune once they see what's behind the curtain. As for me, I didn't become some kind of superhero. I didn't suddenly rebuild my life with vengeance and swagger. That's not how real healing works. It was quiet, subtle. I started sleeping again, cooking for myself, drinking coffee slowly, instead of racing out the door to fix things no one asked me to fix. And then came the letter. Handwritten. No return address. Just my name, neat and familiar. Inside, a single line. Every time I touched you, I felt nothing. And now I know, it wasn't you. It was me. There was no signature. I didn't need one. I folded the letter once, calmly, and slid it into the back of a drawer I no longer locked. Dell called me the next morning. She was back in town. Said she'd found a bookstore by the river, the kind with real paperbacks and a lazy black cat on the counter. Asked if I wanted to meet her there. I almost said no. Almost told her I wasn't ready, that I still had pieces to pick up. But then I remembered something. I wasn't broken anymore. I just wasn't finished. Yeah, I said. I like that. We met at the bookstore that afternoon. We didn't talk about Lorna. We didn't need to. I didn't carry her with me anymore. Dell handed me a book she said reminded her of how I tell stories, messy but honest. And as we sat near the window with a view of the river, I realized something unexpected. This wasn't about starting over. It was about finally starting right. Because some endings aren't losses. They're releases. And this? This was my first breath of real air in years.